during. Um, so I just wanted to thank everybody. This goes out to even the people who might see this later when it's been recorded. It is going to be, there's going to be a link to the recording in the To Your Health November issue. So please, if there's someone that you think would benefit from seeing this, please remind them that they can access it that way. But I want to thank everyone who activated either before, during, or after either of the storms, because you're kind of unsung heroes. I don't know that the public really recognizes everything that you guys do, but that's part of the struggle of trying to get back to normal. Is you weren't doing your normal job. You were doing jobs that you maybe have been trained for, but maybe it was a while back. Maybe you have never had to do this job before. I know that we activated a lot of people that just jumped into action, and I'm so proud of the employees and how they pulled together. But I just want you guys to remember that that's part of why it's difficult to get back to your normal, is because it wasn't just that you went through 2 hurricanes back to back. It was that you were doing things that aren't in your normal job description. Whether you were activated or not, you were doing things that weren't in your normal day. I'll say that. But I also want to thank the HR team here at the Annex building. Um, Kelly Faircloth was instrumental in lining up people to be able to respond to people's needs. Unfortunately, I had an overseas trip planned in advance and missed Milton. So this has been a different experience for me as well. But yeah, HR really helped to make sure that there were resources available. There are still resources available. So please reach out if you or anybody on your team is needing anything in addition to what we're already providing. We're always open to feedback for that. So these are the goals for today's seminar. So resilient, we'll be defining resilient. We'll be talking a lot about what that means. And we're going to look at factors that predispose you to being more resilient. I like to call it the strengths that you bring to the table. You know, we're all wired differently, which means that we're all going to respond differently. We're going to talk about some strategies to increase your personal resilience, and also some coping strategies of getting back to your normal. And I'm also going to do a commercial for the EAP at the end, just to go over your benefits, to remind people what you have, and kind of talk a little bit about next year. So living through a disaster, you guys have all done it. Even if, like me, maybe you were out of town or maybe you evacuated, you are still living through a disaster. You can't escape it. I remember after Helene, because I was here for Helene, someone that worked in the EOC told me that this person actually lived on Indian Rocks Beach and luckily did not suffer any personal loss, but said that it was inescapable, and it was that you walked outside and you saw the damage and you smelled the damage, meaning you smelled waterlogged belongings and mattresses and everything that people had been piling up, but you just felt it every time. So it's a very sensory experience when you live through a disaster. People will, you know, I don't know if you guys have fallen into the same pattern as I have, but you know, when you see people maybe for the first time after the storm passed, the second storm, you'll say, you know, how did you do? Is everyone okay in your family? And you just check in, which is what we do as humans. But I think it's also important, if it's a interaction that you have time for, is to ask somebody about their storm story. Everybody's story is going to be different. Now, this is 101 in disaster response training. I've been responding to disasters for over 20 years, and I remember this very clearly, being taught this, that you know, they encouraged us to get everybody to tell your story from the trauma, from your perspective. And so if it's a specific event like a shooting, it would be, where were you when the shooting started? So the value in that is, there's a lot of values to it, but it's also gives people a chance to just like tell their story and get it off their chest. But it also has a psychological value, and we'll talk more about that later in the talk. But so challenges in the aftermath. Okay, so you guys have all had to deal with losses of possibly property, a sense of safety, whether or not, some people even said, do I even want to stay in Florida? Which hopefully you guys know that if you go through something that's very difficult, not to make major decisions immediately afterwards. If it's still a good idea to leave Florida in 6 months or a year, then maybe you consider it. But making major life decisions when you're still recovering is not generally a good idea. But so some of the challenges would be dealing with your sense of safety and maybe you know, believing that it's not going to happen here. The future might be uncertain in many ways. I believe that everyone who had a job with the county still has a job with the county as far as, I know that some of the parks have been closed, but I know the park employees have been given other jobs in the meanwhile, making sure to get the park safe to open. So hopefully nobody has any uncertainty with jobs, but there might be someone in your family. Maybe you had family members who worked in the service industry. I know my son works at Waffle House. And when I heard, I don't know if you guys know about the Waffle House Index, it's green, yellow, red. And when my son told us that the index was red, that they were actually closing for the storm, that's when I knew it was serious. And so, he did miss some shifts, but he works for a very good company and they've taken care of them. But so people's sense of economic stability has been touched. Most people had to buy things they don't normally have to buy. Um, and so normal self-care was upended. And that's mainly because our routines were upended. Even if the loss that you suffered was the loss of power for a couple of days, you couldn't run your house the way you normally could. So you had to be flexible in that sense. So all of this really just points out how vulnerable we sometimes are. So life, stress, and resilience. So I don't probably have to do this, but stress, I'm going to tell you guys, is the psychological and physical response that results when a person's resources are not sufficient to cope with what life is throwing at them. It can be intensified by the feeling of having very little support or control. Hopefully you guys had support. Hopefully you have felt the sense of community that I've been able to feel, that I felt coming back to work as well. But I do think that most people would say that when the storm was approaching us, that you had no control over that. So many people reached out to me and said, let's do this. Let's get this over with. I'm tired of waiting. Let's do this. We're all ready. We're in place. Let's do this. And so we didn't even have control over that, the timing of it. So like I said, probably everyone knows what stress is, but resilience, this definition says that resilience is believing in ourselves, facing our fears, seeking solutions, adapting, taking action, managing the stress that's coming at us, and not giving up and staying hopeful. So I want everybody to remember that resilience is a lot like a muscle, but it's also an active word. It's not a passive phrase. Resilience is in action, and we live our resilience. We demonstrate our resilience through our acts and through our attitudes and through just our plans. This is a Japanese proverb that says, fall 7 times, but stand up 8. Okay, so that sort of encapsulated what resilience means, is that it's not that you don't fail sometimes, it's not that you're not scared, it's not that you're not overwhelmed. Okay, I like to remind people that if you are trying to be resilient and you feel overwhelmed, what do we teach our kids to do when they feel overwhelmed, whether it's in school or in sports? We need to reach out. We need to ask for help. We need to join with a community, and that will help us feel less overwhelmed usually. Okay, resilience is a response. So I said earlier that it's an action, that it's not passive, it is a response. Sometimes a resilient response can just be to be quiet and calm. Okay, that's still a response. So this part of understanding resilience is about okay, so minor stressors we adapt without thought. That would be an example of if you are riding a bicycle and you see you hit a little bump, right? And so your balance is thrown off a little bit. You're going to adapt on that bicycle without even thinking about it. It's instinct for you. And so because it is a minor thing and it's instinctual, it doesn't generally take much of a toll on us. Now, if you were riding on a bumpy road and you kept hitting bump after bump, then it would move to less than minor. Okay, and then at the other end of the spectrum, life-threatening stressors, where we automatically seek safety. So again, I'm riding my bicycle down the street and a car swerves in front of me. I'm going to immediately throw on my brakes without even telling myself to throw on my brakes, right? Because I am going to protect myself. It's instinctual. So resilience is kind of in between the two extremes. So resilience is when we have other stressors that are going on and our response is based upon our interpretation of, how harmful is this? What can I do about it? Do I have any other resources I can call on? And it also is shaped by what I said earlier in the talk about what we bring to the table. Okay. And as individuals, we have different strengths and different weaknesses as well. But the part about the other stressors is, and when I go out to a job site after they have had a trauma, whether it's a bank robbery, it's a death of an employee, all kinds of different reasons, one of the things I like to remind people of is you guys don't live in a vacuum. you know I am just going to assume that you had stress in your life already before the hurricane. Okay, so everybody is talking about the hurricane, but they're maybe not talking about that you had a sick family member or a sick pet, or that you were a little behind on your bills already, or that your car was in the shop, all kinds of different things like that. So just remember it, because I want you to give yourself credit that you are dealing with everything in your life. And then on top of that, the hurricanes happened, and so on top of that, you had to do extra jobs. And that adds to what we're going through. All right, so this is the thing I said about like what we bring to the table. Okay, so the volume of stress that I just explained about, like, is it a minor thing like a bump in the road, or is it a road that's closed and then there's a hurricane and then you get a flat tire, all kinds of things happen, right? So that intersects with our vulnerabilities. And what that means is vulnerabilities is a different way of saying sort of like the weaknesses that we have or the experiences we have already lived through. So I'm just going to say that one of the vulnerabilities that we all had in going through Milton was that we had just gotten through Helene. Okay. So that was a given. That is like at our baseline at this moment, was that one of our vulnerabilities is we're still recovering from Helene. And I don't know if everyone is aware of it or not, but when Milton was approaching, we still had shelters open. We still had the EOC open. We still had the Citizens Information Center open. 911 was not back to normal yet. So we didn't start from ground zero when we got hit with Milton. We were already way stressed. Okay. So our vulnerabilities can also be other things. Like if you, I had people tell me that they lived through Andrew, and Andrew was horrific in Homestead in Miami. Okay. So if you've already lived through a major hurricane, you're going to react differently than someone who's never been through one that's been a direct hit or close to a direct hit. Um, Also, if you're someone who already gets anxious in windstorms or thunderstorms, that's a vulnerability. And again, it doesn't mean that you're not as good. It just means please give yourself credit that this is going to be hard. Please acknowledge that you are starting with a little bit of a disability, but that doesn't mean that you can't still be resilient. But just give yourself credit that it's extra hard. Okay, here's the good part. We also bring to the table strengths. Okay. And I had a job years ago where I did home studies for international adoptions. And um, two owners of the company, both women. And I used to say, I want Kelly to be with me in a tornado. I want Tanya to be with me in a hurricane. And they weren't from Florida, so they didn't quite understand it. I said, this person is really good in the moment, like get it done, think under pressure, work with what you've got. This person is a really good planner and has everything on hand and doesn't even have to panic, has a lot of stuff on hand. So I say that to illustrate that we don't have the same strengths, but you should hopefully, when you're doing your Monday morning quarterbacking of what did we learn from this storm, is what am I good at? I mentioned earlier that I was out of the country during the storm. And so my family, my two adult children and my husband were hunkering down in our little house in Clearwater. And at one point, my husband said, as I was firing text messages at him, um, I don't know how they still kept taking my text messages, right? But what he said to me was, you taught us well. We're going to be okay. And of course, then I cried. And but it did comfort me to know that they were paying attention and they knew where all my hurricane supplies were, and that was going to be good. So yeah, um, we all have different strengths. My husband is really good at cleaning brush and putting up the storm shutters and things like that. I am not good at that. So that's his strength, right? So in your team, in your little huddle group, figure out what you're good at and take note of it. And next time that should be your job. We should embrace what we're good at. So anyway, long and short of it is that's what adds up to how it's different for every individual. Okay, so the challenging times piece. Um, so I mentioned earlier about feeling overwhelmed, that when you feel overwhelmed, it's hard to know what to do. So again, tap into resources that you might have so you can get help. Recognize when you're overwhelmed. And notice resilience is there, even in small, simple acts and attitudes of perseverance. Okay. Um, I love the storm stories I hear from people where after the storm, people started coming out of their houses and neighbors were seeing each other in their front yards and asking if everybody was okay. And then they started pooling their resources a lot of times, who's got a gas grill, who's got a generator, what can we do? Who needs help getting that tree off their driveway? Those kind of things. So, you know, we pull together. Um, and also recognize that you're growing. I know we don't like to hear it when we're going through it, but it really does make us stronger. And so maybe just give yourself some credit with that. All right, so resilience builders. Research points to several key strength building areas, okay? And those are perspective, purpose, people, and plasticity, which sounds odd, but I'll explain what that means when I get to it. Perspective is the ability to shape how you view your world and your experiences. And remember, if you're a photographer or a lover of art, remember what perspective means in those fields. It has to do sometimes with where you're standing when you're looking at the picture. Okay. So perspective isn't just how you're framing it, like, what you're saying about it in your head, but also like, do I need to step back a little bit and see the big picture? Or do I need to look at this from a different angle? So that's really what perspective means. Purpose is being able to see a meaningful future and a belief in yourself, and that you have the ability to achieve it, or you have the ability to achieve it with help. People, knowing the value of turning to others for support and helpfulness. And I talked a lot about that, it's okay to call on people. And then plasticity. Okay, I think they just wanted another P, right? So really plasticity is flexibility and being able to adapt to change. We think of plastic as being flexible and pliable. So being able to act like the Sunshine Skyway Bridge that will sway in the high winds rather than being rigid and not be as strong. So being able to flex. Um, I also just want to say this again. I know that when we talked about like that, we all have our own vulnerabilities and things that have happened to us in our lifetime. please remember that, you know, you might realize that you need more help than you're getting right now, and that's okay. So please reach out. Please know that, no one has to do this alone, and that we're all going to actually recover at a different speed as well. Um, I think there's a lot of factors that influence that. I would assume that the people who have lost their homes, their cars, who have lost family members, that they're going to recover slower, and that's okay. But all I'm just saying is, if you need help, please remember that it's available, and we're here for you. All right, perspective. Perspective is about regaining a sense of control, or at least the semblance of control, right? How many people panicked when they saw that there were other storms possibly out there in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Caribbean? Yeah, yeah, like we think that we're getting back in control, but remember, we don't control the weather. So we don't have any control over that. But sense of control can just mean that you're trying to control how you react, okay? And how you cope day to day. So pull the focus out to see the big picture. I mentioned that, like from an art perspective. And also take inventory of either the blessings or the resources or what you still have, right? Most people will do that at the beginning of hurricane season, right? When they tell us just to get ready, we'll look at how many batteries do we have? Do we have any canned goods? That kind of thing. So it is a good idea to do it at the end of a traumatic event, but also at the beginning of a season. Remember your capabilities. And lastly, this is probably something I say after every event that I've gone to, is to treat yourself with compassion. Have patience with yourself. When I go to the bank robberies and I talk to the tellers, one of the things I tell them is that, remember, we're all different. We all have different styles. There's going to be maybe chatty Kathy who wants to talk about the bank robbery over and over again, and maybe it's helping her to do that. But you might be the kind of person who doesn't want to talk about it. You want to just get back to work and get in your groove and just get busy. So the compassion part comes in when we have to tell our coworkers or our neighbors or our family members, hey, I appreciate that you are getting something out of talking about this, but right now I can't hear it. Not that I don't care about you, but I'm trying to take care of myself. And so it's okay to say that, to remember that, I have to look out for myself, and I can do it with compassion. I can explain to people when I just can't talk about it. An aside, I'll give you guys an example of how this ties into other things that are going on. 2 hurricanes and an election, that's kind of a big thing. It's kind of a big stressor for a lot of people. And throughout the election season, I've told people that you are in charge of what you listen to, read, and hear. If it's overwhelming to you to hear about the election, turn off the TV, turn off the radio, get off social media. So that's compassion too. Self-compassion is limiting how much you can process at a time. And so just remember, you're allowed to do that. You should be in charge of yourself when it comes to something like that. So purpose. Purpose is about finding your footing and your focus, okay? Hurricane, tornadoes, those are excellent metaphors and actual events where we do kind of like get confused, right? You get confused as to what day is it? So my team here in HR laughed at me because when I came back, remember I told you I was firing massive text messages at my family, and most of them were, put my laptop in the closet, put my calendar in a drawer, get my absentee ballot that I haven't filled out yet, put it somewhere safe, oh, I have money hidden in a drawer, get that. And so when I came back from being away, oh, and by the way, I was sick too, so I wasn't 100%. I couldn't find everything, right? Because of course they didn't put it exactly where I said to put it. They were doing stuff on the fly, right? And so my first day back, I was like, I can't find my laptop, but I'm pretty sure I'll find it soon. And then I found my laptop, then I found my calendar, found all my things. And so my experience this week is I'm not losing things, I'm losing events. Like I don't know if anybody is familiar with Clearwater Jazz Holiday, but it's always in October. And just earlier this week, I was like, wait, what happened to the Jazz Holiday? Did we have it? And most people didn't know, right? Because it wasn't important. I'm assuming it was canceled, right? But I also wondered if I lost daylight savings time, and someone reminded me that it happens this weekend. But that's just to give you an example of like that. We are just don't have our footing and our focus, and we need to be patient with ourselves because number one, it's a shared experience. It's something that we are all going through in some degree. And so the other part is use your sense of humor. Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny when I couldn't find my laptop. My husband had put my laptop in my roller bag, which I take to work all the time, but he had shoved it in the pencil compartment. Like, I have no idea how he even got it in there, but that's not where it goes. So it took me a while to find it. And I had to laugh about that. Like, you guys were doing it. You were putting stuff away. You weren't necessarily following directions well or being logical, but yeah, it was safe. So that was good. So yeah, your focus is going to take a little while. It's like having too many browsers open on your computer. You're not gonna necessarily be at your best. So again, show yourself some grace. Um, and that set micro goals, set daily goals. It could be that you just want to take a shower today, right after the storm. So that's important as well. People. Resilience is nothing without people. Turn to others to get and give support. The safety net of others. I talked about telling your storm stories. There is a wonderful power of the narrative. It can join us with people. It can also give them more of a perspective. Um, I like to say that when you go through a trauma, it's like a bullseye. And so you in your house or your shelter or wherever you were, you're the center of your bullseye. Okay, somebody else in another part of the state, their center is different. So they're going to have a different perspective. So when you hear other people's storm stories that have a different perspective of you, you're going to get a bigger picture of what happened. You're going to know more about what it was really like other than just what you experienced. A lot of people lost power like right away or during the storm, so they didn't know what the news stations were saying. So you sometimes feel a little bit left out. So storm stories can help with that as well, and also show us, maybe there was help and planning and stuff going on, and we didn't even know it, and that is often reassuring. So plasticity, remember this is about being flexible. Resurrect your routines. When I talk to groups after they've been through a trauma, I tell them, please stick to your routine. There is so much value in our routine. You think about how you put your kids to bed when they're little and how you would do, like, I'm just going to say, like, you would do bath and then you would do bottle and you would do stories and maybe songs or prayers or whatever you did in your family. And then the child was put to bed. Okay. We did that because it taught them this is when I'm supposed to go to sleep. This is when I'm winding down. And their brain gets triggered to oh yeah, I'm winding down. Okay, we benefit from using routines like that as adults too. So, many people told me just getting a hot cup of coffee meant so much to them after the storm. Okay, if having coffee in the morning is part of your routine, lots of value to that. And know that day by day it's going to change. I know that they had comfort stations open where you could take a shower, where you could do laundry, where you could get fresh water. um, so that is not part of your normal routine, but maybe for a few days it was part of your routine, and so it was expected, it was predictable, and that helped. And then consciously turning down your worries. That requires you to notice when you're starting to worry and when you're starting to spiral, and then saying, okay, stop, take a few deep breaths, and remember my micro goals. What is it I need to get done today? Okay. Um, and then, yeah, the quote on here says, the ability to adapt is wired into our brains. So believe that it is there, know that it is there, and what you're trying to do is just access that. One of the handouts that you guys have is on mindfulness. I do not think that we are going to have time to do a mindfulness exercise, but Cigna actually prepares the slides and the handouts. And so on the handout for mindfulness, there is a link to UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center. I did check that out, and it was actually pretty interesting because it had a few different resources, and it wasn't asking you to to pay money or join anything, which I think is important. Um, but mindfulness, I always say, is something that you practice when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, you know how to do it, and your brain is familiar with it. So the main things with mindfulness is to find a place that feels calm to you. If you work forward facing, you're dealing with the public, or you are just in a cubicle and you don't really have any privacy, your place where you can practice mindfulness might be in the bathroom, it might be in your car, it might be in a part of the building that's not being used. I think it's important to know that. By the way, if you work downtown, the perfect mindfulness place is the law library. Nobody ever goes in there that I've seen, and it is so peaceful. So just a heads up about that. I love the law library. It's in the old courthouse. So yeah, this mindfulness practice sheet has a lot of resources that are good. I would also remind everybody that we have a wonderful resource in-house, and that is Shannon, our health coach and nutritionist. Shannon does Mindfulness Mondays. You can access that on the calendar. And we also have different exercise classes that Sydney does in the gym if you're in downtown campus or can get here for any of her classes. All of these things are really good for stretching and just trying to find your calm, peaceful place best you can. But the Mindfulness Mondays with Shannon is really good because it's online and it doesn't take very long. So most people can, try to fit it into their day once in a while. Okay. A firm foundation. Okay. To be well, you need to be resilient. You need to remember that sleep resets your mind and body. A lot of people told me they had difficulty sleeping after the storm. It could have been because they were sleep deprived. And when we're sleep deprived, it oftentimes is harder to fall asleep and harder to fall into your peaceful place. Um, Eating well is still important. If you've ever been activated and worked at the EOC or the CIC, you will know that food is a major event there. There are 4 hot meals a day and snacks available all of the time. They understand that they need to feed people. But the other thing about that, there's also water and soda and tea and things like that available too. But one of the reasons why they do that in a center like that is because when you are stressed out, when you are in the midst of a crisis, your thirst and hunger get turned down. Now you can tell me that you're at home. I've done it too. You're waiting for the hurricane and you're just tearing through those hurricane snacks, right? Um, Most of the time you're not eating because you're hungry. You're just eating because you're kind of stressed and it's there, right? But if you're working and you're clearing yards and you're doing all that kind of stuff after a storm, just remember that you need to remind yourself to drink plenty of water. Water will flush out stress hormones. It's very restorative. And we often forget to do it. The same thing with eating well. Most people's hurricane snacks are not healthy snacks. Mine aren't usually healthy snacks. Along the lines of hurricane snacks, I have to tell you guys that even though I wasn't here for the storm, my gathering ability kicked into high gear. And while I wasn't experiencing the storm, by the time it actually hit you guys, I had like a full-on garbage bag full of food in my hotel room, snacks that didn't need to be refrigerated. And I finally was like, what am I doing? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm acting like I'm in the hurricane. So it is kind of hardwired in there. But no, I was not eating healthy snacks at that point. But please try to remember to do that. And we're still going through the recovery, so still remind yourself to drink plenty of water and to eat well. Exercise can also help with a stress response. So if you can make time to walk, especially if it's part of your routine, we talked about keeping your routine the same, but it's always good to try and to exercise. It's going to help you sleep better, and also you can work out some of your stress that we store in our body. Okay, resilience. Finding in yourself a sense of hope for what will come, a belief that you can achieve it, strength to take action to accomplish it, and a willingness to seek compassionate support from others, but also compassionate support for yourself in order to take small steps forward. I think they have the little plant that's coming up through the cracks to remind us that, sometimes you're not planted in the best place with the most fertile conditions, but if you persevere, something's going to come of it, something good, hopefully. Um, so hopefully resilience makes a little bit more sense. Remember the 4 Ps: the purpose, the people, the plasticity, and the can't remember the other one. I'll look it up. Um, but make it something special for you. What resilience means for you, how you are going to accomplish it, how you are going to practice it. It's cumulative. You're not going to lose what you've already gained, and that's very encouraging as well. So the EAP. Most people know that the EAP is a counseling resource if you want therapy, either face-to-face or telehealth. Um, so I don't spend a lot of time on that. If someone has any questions, please reach out to me. My cell phone number is the best way to get a hold of me. And my number, if you do have a pen, is 727-639-4266. But you can reach out to me. Don't try to think of when it's my day here. If I'm not here, I just call you as soon as I can. But it's also in the A to Z guide, under Lorelei, L for Lorelei, or E for EAP. Or you can email me. My email address is also listed in the A to Z guide. So, but what I've been doing a lot lately with people is one and done. So they will email me or call me, or sometimes even come in, and they just want help getting started. They don't, maybe they've never been in therapy, maybe their family's never been in therapy. They're not familiar with, what all these things mean. So come in and talk to me and let me help you get started. I know that, number one, I don't have enough hours in the day to be a therapist for everyone in the county that needs it. But I'm also not the best fit for everybody. Everybody needs different things. Maybe you need after hours, maybe you need weekends, maybe you need someone who specializes in couples therapy. So let me help you find that. And that is no charge to you. You don't need an authorization to be able to do it. You don't need authorization to talk to me ever. But if you're going to see somebody in the community, you do need to get authorization, and you can call the EAP number, and they can give you that authorization. The authorization is in your name. So even if you end up seeing a different therapist than the one that you thought you were going to see, that's okay. It's still in your name. So you just give the authorization number to the new therapist. You guys get 6 free visits per issue per year. And everyone that lives in the household is covered by the EAP. So even if they're not on the county's insurance, even if you're not on the county's insurance, if it's your mother-in-law, if it's your nephew that you are taking care of in your household, they are covered because they live with you. And so most of you are aware that we are switching from Cigna to UMR, which is a United Healthcare company, part of the umbrella of United Healthcare, in January. We have been told that the EAP benefits will remain the same. I am sure there will be hiccups and we'll have to work things out. So please just know that we're going to be doing our best. I will still be here, and I will be going through some training in January, so my schedule might be a little wonky, but most people are so busy from getting back from the holidays that that shouldn't be an issue. But hopefully you guys have the same benefits and we'll have a health coach. Um, I'm seeing stuff come into the chat, but I think that that's good stuff for everybody. So the other thing that I should remind people about with the EAP is that you guys have a benefit for a legal consultation of 30 minutes per year per family member, and also financial services. You have a 30-minute financial consultation. That's free of charge. I was at a benefits fair last week, and Chris, who was on the Zoom earlier, mentioned that you guys have options of buying into a legal plan as well. So it's not part of the EAP, but you do have a lot of benefits. And here's Chris. She can explain it better than I do. How did they find out about that benefit, Chris?
It's the ROG legal benefit that we offer with our voluntary benefits. We are doing, I think, an information session tomorrow from 4 to 5. You can go and sign up for that, but you can also get information from our A to Z guide under A for ROG. Most matters are 100% covered by this plan, so check into it.
Thank you. And so when I go out to different groups, I do sometimes hear that people are not aware of all the benefits that we have. So we like to do commercials and tell people what they have and make sure that they're aware of it. But the A to Z guide is probably the best source for finding anything. And literally just look it up. And if you don't find the answer to your question, then reach out to someone in benefits or wellness. And, I know they're really busy with annual enrollment right now, but we do try to make sure people are aware of what they are entitled to. I didn't mention the last handout, the self-care strategies. That's also in your packet of handouts, but it really just summarizes a lot of what we already talked about. That's why I'm not going to just read it out to you guys. But I know if you're like me, you get a lot of information and maybe you can't absorb it all right then and there. So this is a really good synopsis of the things that we talked about that you can take with you. Feel free to put this up in the break room where you work, because maybe other people weren't able to come to this, and they can see those, what to me are common sense, but I do this all the time, so it might not be common sense for other people for that. So I don't think there's any questions that need to be answered, which is nice for me.
I did put a survey link in the chat, everybody. If you could just take a really fast minute, it doesn't take but a few seconds, and just fill this out, please. Just click on the link, it'll guide you right there.
It will help Cigna, who I guess we're leaving, but it'll help Cigna make plans as what they can tweak, what they can make better. And they want it to meet your needs. So that feedback is important. So, all right. Well, I think that is everything that we have from, I didn't show you guys my references, but there they are. The reason why we can't give you the deck is because it's proprietary information for Cigna. So that's why we're not allowed to like send everybody a copy of the deck. People sometimes will ask me that. But it is recorded so you can see it again, or you do have the handouts. So, all right.